All right. Go ahead and call the order. Hsd School Board meeting Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 at approximately 7:01 p.m. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Sure. Carl Hubner,
Here.
Jason Giard,
Here.
David Smith,
Here.
Megan Malcolm, here. Erin Pellegrini,
Here.
thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools, Bob Thompson, and approaching the board table is CFO, Jeff Dowd.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Board members, if you can take a look in your packet for minutes from the August 23rd, 2022 board meeting. Are you looking for a review and motion to accept?
I'll make the motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from August 23rd, 2022.
Motion by Megan, I'll make the second.
I'll second that.
All right, any questions, comments? All right. All approved? Raise your hand.
Oh.
Good. Abstain? All right,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, and Melissa, do we have any public comments?
We do not have any tonight.
All right, thank you. All right, next we're going to move on to the school highlights. Turn it over to building principals to present.
This is what happens when I go first. You think by now I'd have learned, but I'm working on it. So I'm pleased to let you know that the Central School is off to a great start this year. Students are learning the routines and adjusting to being back in school full time after a summer full of lots of fun. We've had a few challenges with our buses that have led to some bus backups, and children have been arriving at home a little bit later than normal. But I know that this is an agenda item that we'll address tonight, so I certainly won't dwell on it for too long. In celebration, last Thursday, Hsd Central School hosted our 20th Read for a Hero event. This is an event that was instituted back in 2002 to celebrate the heroes that support our students every day. This year, we welcomed retired Navy veteran Tom Young, Deputy Chief Kelly, Officer Winter, Officer Fair, and Officer Lamontagne from the Hampstead Police Department. In addition, we also welcomed Captain Dane, Firefighter Bullio, and Firefighter Earhart from the Hampstead Fire Department. And then from across the state, we welcomed Firefighter Hood from the Hampton Fire Department, Officer Whitehead from the Hampton PD, Officer Wallen from the Merrimack PD, and Officer Manant from Salem PD. So we're grateful that the heroes could take some time out of their day to come in, share a story with our students, and have some positive interactions with them. Our current enrollment is 455 students. We are still at policy or below on all of our grade levels except for grade 2, which we addressed last time at the board meeting, but we're only at 21 students in one classroom at this time. You know, and as I mentioned, all those 455 students are settling in and learning the routines. The kindergartners are navigating the building like pros, and our fourth graders are really stepping up to the role of being leaders in our building. One of them said to me today, "It's still hard to believe I'm a fourth grader. I keep going to the third grade wing, but I'm so excited." And so she was really proud of herself. So I'm excited about the positive start for the year and excited for the work ahead. Any questions? Thank you.
Good evening. I am also thrilled to be able to report that we are underway at the middle school. We've had what I would consider a great start. We had a really well-attended open house the night before school started. That was really exciting to see and meet a lot of parents, families, and of course students. Our athletics and some of our after-school clubs are underway. We've had some competitions with the athletics and some meetings set up for things like student council, diversity, and that kind of thing. They're just starting to get underway. Students are settling into a routine nicely. We do have an enrollment right now of 381. We saw a huge increase over the summer and welcomed back a lot of families whose students had gone either private or homeschool. So that's been exciting, and we've been able to work through scheduling and that kind of thing for those students. We already had our picture day, so picture retakes are November 2nd for those people who either didn't get there or will want to retake. The staff have been fantastic, really just helpful, jumping in, how can I help? Today, as you know, is voting day in school, and it required a lot of extra hands on deck with arrival, dismissal, you name it, and people have just jumped in. I also just want to give a shout out to our technology staff who has worked really hard, short-staffed and trying to deploy one-to-one Chromebooks and just done an awesome job. And then lastly, we had a really nice 9/11 remembrance ceremony at the beginning of school yesterday where Katie Wolf, our 8th grade social studies teacher, organized a moment of silence and the pledge and a beautiful rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, as well as a reading from students about 9/11, and that was really well done. So thank you to Mrs. Wolf and the students who participated. Any questions?
Yeah, can I just ask a question on that? It's kind of strange to think about that, you know, these kids don't know what happened on 9/11. So can you just talk about, like, how do you teach that and how, you know, what is the response or what are some of the things that are being said?
Sure. So I think it's a variety and it's grade level specific. So in 5th grade, it's a little bit lighter about it. I'm not sure exactly. They did activities around it, and I wasn't there for the activities, so I'm not sure exactly what they did, but it's, you know, and it's actually for me personally to come to a building that really does recognize it, because in some buildings they don't recognize it. You know, I was in a school that we didn't do a moment of silence or anything, and kids don't know about it, you're right. But the teachers are careful in just how they describe it, and it's pretty light, and it talks about exactly what happened. The reading that they did talked about what happened without detail, but just that this is a day that we remember, and it did go through the chronology of what happened, and the World Trade Center being hit, and the timing of the planes and the Pentagon, but keeping it light and not giving too much detail. 8th graders get into a little bit more. Mrs. Wolf does a really great job of talking about it a little bit and giving kids a chance to ask questions, but not going into a lot of detail.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
No, it's very important, so that's why I was curious. You know, I talked to my daughter about it last night. It was good to hear what she had to say about it, so it was just interesting.
Yeah, I was impressed with what I saw, and again, I was not in all of the classrooms, so I haven't seen all of it in action yet, but they did a nice job of it.
Okay.
Oh, the students that Mrs. Wolf had do it, she used primary resources. So it was her RTI group that did the actual ceremony in the morning. So that's just one example of in 8th grade. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. We're going to move on to current business. We can turn it over to Mr. Thompson to begin the discussion around the transportation update.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Smith. Transportation has certainly been a topic of conversation in our schools. I've had a number of conversations with parents. I know that our building administrators have as well. I want to start by thanking our parents for their patience. The start of the school year has not been perfect. You know, there is a national bus driver shortage that is impacting all school districts, but it's also impacting us here in Hampstead. And that impacts students instructionally. They miss the beginning of their school day. You know, I was at the Central School on the first day of school. I watched students arrive late to school on the very first day. That's of no comfort to me. I've also had several conversations with parents who've had to adjust their work schedule. They've had to miss work. They've had to forego the bus altogether to drive their students to school. It's pretty disheartening. I take responsibility for that. And I wish to apologize to folks that the beginning of the year has not been perfect and has not been ideal. And I certainly take that to heart, and I do appreciate people's patience. We work with First Student, our transportation provider, and I have to say, with all of the challenges that First Student has faced in terms of this bus driver shortage, they have been very responsive. They have communicated with the school district, and that speaks to the fact that tonight, we have the general manager, David Fairweather, from First Student. He's the general manager of the New England region, and Crystal Mancini, who is the manager of our First Student transportation. They are here tonight. They jumped at the opportunity to come here and engage the board in a conversation about the transportation issues that we've been having, so that we can work towards some solutions. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to David and Crystal.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. I'm Dave Fairweather. I'm the area general manager for First Student. I have multi-state responsibility here through New England. Crystal Mancini to my left is the location manager of our Plastyle location. And we absolutely are pleased to be here tonight and have the chance to speak to you a little bit about the startup and some of the things we have in motion to improve as we move forward here. And certainly we want to own the startup this year. It wasn't one we're used to providing for the Hampstead School District. We've worked with you guys for a long time. We're very appreciative of our partnership, and just be assured that we're going to work hard to correct things quickly as we move forward. Mr. Thompson talked about the nationwide bus shortage. I won't get into that too much. I think everybody's pretty aware of what goes on there. It's a very challenging school bus driver job. It's a very unique job. Part-time, split day, student conduct, commercial driver's license. There's a lot that goes into it. We started the year a driver short up here, and then shortly into the year we lost another driver. So when you're talking about a nine route contract, you're one driver short, you're already better than 10%, you're less than 90% of plan, and then we lost that second one, and that complicated things for us. But that's on us to figure it out. I think the good news is that, number one, we have one of the best performing managers in New England here to my left. A lot of confidence in Crystal. She's a proven performer. She puts safety first. She knows how to react and adjust and really beat some of these challenges that we have. She's done it before elsewhere. So full confidence in her and to start moving the needle here. On the driver staffing, I want to talk to this a little bit. It's not only the recruiting and hiring, right? And by the way, we have 5 people in training right now. So we expect this situation to ease pretty quickly, all right? But part B of that is retention, all right? So it's driver retention. So just want the board to understand that we work hard on that piece too, particularly over the summer, all right? At the end of each school year, we survey all of our drivers on their intentions to return, And then we have a really kind of a robust, very planned, very structured communication with our drivers over the summer to stay engaged with them to ensure their return in the fall, right? So it's not always perfect. You know, typically we always lose. There's always one or two unanticipated losses over the course of the summer due to situations and, you know, people, whatever people might do. So, but again, I mean, that's what we do. That's why we have these retention programs, and that's why we're always continually hiring and recruiting and hiring folks. All of our drivers work under a collective bargaining agreement, which is very competitive. The wages are competitive. The benefits are very competitive. But we're always looking at that too. I mean, if there's an opportunity to do something there, you know, we have a good relationship with the Teamsters local we work with, and we're all hand in hand in terms of you know, providing that safe, reliable student transportation at the end of the day. We did have a, I know, in getting briefed on this situation, I know we've had some communication issues in the morning in terms of some late buses. I think we have our arms around that now in terms of the communication tree. We had some issues with routing, with our routing at the beginning of the year. We use a routing software that we had some issues with it, frankly, going in. My action there is I'm seriously going to look at a different routing software for next year, one that's been more effective for us at some of our other locations. But the key at the end of the day is having enough drivers. Like I said, we have 5 in training. We have another one that's awaiting a permit, right? Our application flow is good, okay? Which is, I'm pleased to tell you that, because a year ago it wasn't. So our application flow is good. So just a matter of getting them in, get them through our training progress, our training program. Our training is pretty rigorous. You may know it can be pretty lengthy. It can be a 6 to 8 week process. All right, for somebody who comes in without a commercial driver's license and putting them through the whole process. So that's why we always have to stay ahead of it. Like I said, we have a pretty good pipeline right now. I know we had some hiccups with First View. You know, Crystal can talk to that a little bit. You know what? I'm gonna let you jump in and talk to that right now, if that's okay.
Hi, everyone. So our First View app, I know all the parents and the school board, and I know some teachers have access to the First View. A lot of parents have called up. They don't have their kids on there. They can't find them. The code's not working. Our First View information gets uploaded from our routing, which is another reason why we're looking at a new routing program. It comes over from routing into First View, where all the parents or anybody can track, you know, if they have their student IDs. I learned today that when the upload had come over for the start of the school year, it had the 5-digit student ID code in the system. And I learned today that when it came over this year with the new routes, it came over with their state ID numbers, which is a 10-digit number. I worked with IT all day today in order to get this uploaded correctly, and they did a new upload tonight for the 5-digit code to work tomorrow. It should go live tomorrow, so all the parents who had access to the 5-digit code can get into the system. If for any reason it doesn't upload correctly tomorrow, I have the Bible with all the 10-digit codes of every student that is in that program. All they have to do is email me at crystal.mancini@firstgroup.com, let me know their child's name, and I can give them their 10-digit code while I still work on getting the 5-digit code in there. If for any reason a parent or anybody puts in a code, whether it be, you know, the 10-digit code or the 5-digit code, and they don't see their child, it could be because their child's not assigned to a school bus, which, again, all I need is their full name and their address, and we can hop in there, assign them to a bus, and then they should be able to track their children. Any questions?
Crystal, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about the effectiveness of the First View app in a situation that we're on bus backup or we're on double bus backup.
So unfortunately, the way that the First View app works is if your child is assigned to a bus, it's going to track that bus and every stop that it makes. If we're on bus backup and that particular bus that your student is assigned to isn't running, unfortunately the First View app won't work because the bus physically isn't moving. You won't be able to track it. So in a situation like that, I'm dispatching in the morning as being short drivers. My dispatcher is driving. So all you have to do is just call the office and just ask me what, tell me what your child's name is and the stop that they have, what school they go to, and I can easily tell them what bus. And on the First View app, there should be a link onto the left-hand side of the screen, where as opposed to tracking your student's bus, you can track another bus, and you'll be able to see where that bus is located. Or I can just tell them over the phone where the bus is at.
Thank you. I think as we get off of bus backup, get back into a full staff situation, the First View app becomes a lot more effective.
It would be extremely effective.
Yep. And I think it'll be a lot easier for parents to, and I even noticed myself that having entered the 5-digit code, went in today and I had to enter a 10-digit code. So if we're
Right.
back to the 5-digit code, parents may see a blip in their connectivity to that app and their students being recognized. But as soon as that 5-digit code is back in effect, they can re-enter it and they'll start seeing their students again.
Absolutely. They'll be able to see all the current routes for this school year in there. And then, like I said, if there's any reason that they can't, it could just be just assigning them to a school bus that they might not be assigned to because they already knew when the bus was coming, so they didn't actually get assigned to it in our system. And all they have to do is just call or email, and we'll take care of them.
I got a question. First from Mr. Thompson. Will there be an email going out to notify parents about the change of back to the 5-digit code? Will that be sent out so they know tomorrow?
I'm going to be checking it. I'll be in the office at 5:30 tomorrow morning and pulling it up, and I have a test code that I'm going to use to make sure that it works. And as long as it does, I plan on contacting Bob and letting him know that it's good to go, and he can send out the notification to all the parents.
All right, thank you.
So if there's an issue, and who should they be contacting?
Me.
You? Okay.
Yep. They can
All
just
right.
contact me. They can either call the office, which is 603-382-2303, and go to the dispatch line, because that's where I will be in the morning, or they can send me an email.
Okay. When you put out the email that Mr. Smith said, can you add in her contact information just to make sure? And I want to try to wrap my head around this. So you were short a bus driver, which would have made it complicated, but then you immediately lost a second bus driver, so that when you put in the route information into this program, there were holes basically, and it didn't work well. So that, is that why some students weren't picked up?
So the way that it works is, at the beginning of the school year, all our buses were routed for all 9 buses for the district.
Yep.
When we were down a bus, not having a driver, what happens with that route is we take, based on the geographics of the town and the capacity of the students, because we can only hold 77 students per bus, is we usually take 2 or 3 buses to transport those students from that bus. So it depends on what bus is closer to those stops in order to be able to get them and also make sure that they're going to fit on the bus. So it actually doesn't get routed, and it doesn't go into the system to be routed. We send information to the schools. I've been in communication with Tara Lynn and Erin in regards to, and the schools themselves, the administration there, to what buses are taking what students. So the students know that's the bus that they take.
Okay. So, yeah, so it was a combination of the routing and being short a driver, and then at the beginning of the school year, it
Correct.
just generally, there's going to be a little bit of issues, but it just multiplied what was going on?
Yeah.
Okay. But now you feel confident that you have it ironed out?
I feel confident. It's still, we're still in the beginning of the school year, but I do feel confident in the next few weeks that we should be able to get a hold on, having some staff out there and.
Okay.
Yeah, I might just add that, we measure ourselves very closely on all sorts of metrics. On-time service is one of them, obviously. We're going to we have mechanisms we can use to track, all right, and trend our improvement. So that'll be in place, all right? So that'll make it real clear where our opportunities are and where we can really focus our efforts.
And then I'm assuming at the beginning of the year, it always is a little bit slower, it takes a little bit longer, but there's a somewhat rapid increase not long afterwards?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if there's an issue with the student not getting on the bus or sometimes staying on the bus when they shouldn't, that's something they can contact you and you'll be able to establish with the bus driver?
Absolutely. Usually if a student is missed, because the times are off, or, the driver might not have realized that was a stop, based on trying to scramble and, get the kids onto other buses, we always have the bus go back and we make transportation available.
Okay.
Whether it be their bus that they're supposed to take, or we send out another bus that might be closer.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right,
I
a
have
couple.
I was going to say, I have a question too. So I've heard, obviously, about some of the buses being late, but there's also been instances of them being early, and so the kids are missing their buses. So is there something we can do can we either put their schedule, if it's going to always be that early, can the schedule time move so that they know that, or is?
If we know that the bus is going to always be early, we can make the adjustments on the route or contact the school to send out that particular bus, have the students out 5 minutes earlier. If it's something where it's unexpected and we have to back up first thing in the morning and we don't have the opportunity to send out to all the parents, to be out there 5 minutes earlier, we always make sure we send another bus around, so that they don't miss school.
Okay.
My question is, it's two questions. One is, I know of a parent right now that every day they know that their child's being dropped off 20 minutes late. It's happened every day since school started. So for that parent, and that's just one parent of many, when will they see the relief that here's when you're going to be back on time? What is your estimation of that?
I would say we're very much hopeful for the end of September, if not the first week of October.
Okay, so plan for the next 2 to 3 weeks that any student that their time is going 20 minutes right now, 15 minutes, it's going to be another 2 to 3 weeks.
Let me jump in on that. Yeah, I say, realistically, it's the real fix is having enough drivers, obviously.
Understood.
But I think things will, that 20 minutes, just because we're in the first, our 8th or 9th day of school here, that will improve. It won't get to, I don't think we'll erase that 20-minute gap right away, but that should keep improving now. So that's kind of what I'm getting at in terms of measuring our day-over-day performance.
I was going to say, so you're measuring that right now, so you'll know you're seeing when it's coming down and when it's not?
We have that capability, and we have not been measuring it, but we will start now.
Okay.
All right.
David, if I may, that's convenient, you're both David. So when we're at full level staffing, at that point, you'll be able to take a much better look at baseline data, our normal routing, and if we end up with a bus that is running longer than anticipated, it may be possible to off-shift. Parents would be notified if that were the case.
Okay. Then my follow-up question is kind of along that line is, we know at the beginning of the year we had some, without getting into personnel, we know we did have some trouble with some bus drivers that didn't know the routes well enough, were going past the drop-offs, dropping off in a wrong location. Can you explain your training program a bit more for those parents that are concerned that their childs were dropped off in a wrong stop or just completely flew by their stops?
So our training program is very extensive. There's a lot of backgrounds, fingerprinting that they go through before they even start to go into training. We require a minimum of 44 hours worth of training, and even more past that as far as learning the bus and the aspects of the bus, pre-trip, driving it. So they go through all of that training. All of our drivers are experienced. They've all been through rigorous training. The beginning of the school year, new kids start, kids go to other schools. So even the drivers that are veterans to that run, and they've done that run for 10 years, they don't know that that was a stop and it's now on their route sheet, so they have to look and say, this is a stop now, or I don't have to stop at this house because that kid's not there anymore. Right. So the beginning of the school year is a little tough, even just for the veteran drivers that do the typical run. But the first 2 weeks of school, when you have to back up other buses, you're not only doing your run, but learning their run as well. I have full confidence in all my drivers that they are very safe out there, and they're careful of where they're stopping, and they're not, slamming on their brakes and stopping at a house that they don't know. But
I know it's very abnormal because this is almost my 10th year in the district, probably, and I haven't seen something like this happen, right? But for new parents, that are their kindergartner, their first grader, who it might be their first child. So this is, a lot of trust, and then they see like these things happening. We need to rebuild that trust quickly. So that's why I'm asking these questions.
Let me jump in there. So, thank you for that. We have a saying at First Student: once late, stay late. All right. So I think about new drivers, and I think about some of these backed up runs, and you know, some of the shuffling that might have to go on a day-to-day basis. You know, if our drivers start running behind, all right, they run behind, right? And that's where we notify the school district, and that communication's got to be wide open, because at the end of the day, we're going to operate safely, period. And, you know, we'll work backwards on the on-time performance, but we got to make sure we're safe first, okay?
Right. Okay. Anyone else?
I have a question, but it's more for Bob or Carolyn or.
Then I just say thank you for,
Yeah,
you know,
yes.
coming here. It takes courage
Thank
and
you.
everything.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
I
Thanks for
appreciate
the
you taking the
opportunity.
questions and being honest with what's going on.
Yep, thank you.
So one of the concerns that I've been seeing thrown around is when the buses are late. And so a parent has to either wait for the bus to show up, or they decide they're going to drive their student. They're concerned that the student's going to be marked late. So I think that's just something I wanted to address, like, are we taking care of that so that they're not marked late? Because I know, like, if a bus comes late, you don't mark them late because they're on the bus. But if a parent's driving them because they, you know, missed the bus or bus was late, how do we ensure that's not happening?
I'd welcome the building principals to talk a little bit about attendance coding and late arrival, if they'd like to come up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, as you mentioned, if a bus is arriving late, we're often, if we can, at Central School holding attendance, but we do get our Unified Arts started pretty quickly. But those kids that come in late on the bus are absolutely excused. If a parent comes in and it's due to a transportation with the bus issue, we are excusing those absences
Okay.
right now. Yep.
Okay.
And we're doing pretty much the same thing. We're holding attendance until all buses are in. We have advisory first, so it's pretty easy for us to do and not even taking attendance. So there have been maybe a couple instances where I've seen kids coming in that were tardy because the parent drove them in because they didn't get the bus, and we're noting that. It's right in Power School that it was due to bus issues, so it's not ever
Okay,
held
so they
against
just have to
them.
let you know that that's why they're late, and then
Correct.
you're good. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to our next agenda item. You all do not have to stay for the rest of this, as much as you want to hear what's going on in the district, so
Thank you for
appreciate you
your
coming.
time.
Exactly, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so next up is we're going to talk about the school district's strategic plan action steps. Mr. Thompson?
All right, good evening. I am very excited to stand up here tonight. Tonight, our leadership team members will present the Hempstead School District's strategic plan action steps. And I just wanted to give a little bit of context to tonight's presentation. So over the course of the 2021-2022 school year, a group of diverse stakeholders worked with an outside consultant to develop a 3-year strategic plan for the Hempstead School District. The plan, as you will see in a moment, identified the values of our school district and identified 5 priority areas, 5 areas of work over the next 3 years. It was very exciting to be involved in that work. And we had decided at the end of that process that what we would do is we would, every year we'd come to the board in September and we'd bring a list of action items that support the work of the strategic plan. And that way, over the course of the 3 years, we will have executed all of the priorities, all of the activities in the strategic plan. And I think you've heard me say this before, but there's a little bit of a trap with the development of a strategic plan. There are some districts that will develop this plan. It will look great on paper. People will feel good for having participated in the process. And then the plan goes on the shelf, collects dust. 3 to 5 years later, you get ready to write a new one. That will not happen in Hampstead. Our commitment is to ensure the execution of the Hampstead strategic plan, and the action plan that you will see and hear about tonight is the direct result of, is the work that will occur this year. There are items that are in our strategic plan that are not addressed this year. There is a longer-term plan to ensure that those get addressed either in the second or the third year. So with that said, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to hand this over to the Director of Student Services. Jess is going to speak to the values in the strategic plan.
Good evening, everyone. Before I review these core values, I just want to share a quick story. As I was coming in for my interview in late June, I noticed in the waiting room this beautiful book, which caught my eye, and I later asked if I could take one home, even though I hadn't been offered a position yet. And really, why it resonated with me so much is the core values. And within these core values I'm about to review, they are at the heart of every decision I make and I align with. So it just felt right, and I'm excited to kind of review and share these because these core values or traits are not just worthwhile qualities, but they're also going to be used at the heart of every decision that we make as we're moving through the strategic plan. So the first core value is to communicate with positive intent. And what that means is that we're going to engage in communication that is honest in intent and transparent in our goals. Our second core value is honor the child. And we're going to strive to make child-centered decisions. And every decision we make is going to embed in it what's best for kids. The third value is relationships and team building, and we're going to strive to build relationships that strengthen our team, and we know that we can accomplish more when we have a high-functioning team versus making decisions in isolation. The fourth is acting with integrity, and we are honest, ethical, dependable, accountable, fair, non-judgmental, and trustworthy in our acts. And lastly, we're going to continue to develop a culture of collaboration between parents, students, teachers, and the community for the betterment of the Hempstead School District. So again, these core values are going to be woven in every decision that we make as we're moving through this strategic plan.
Good evening. I'm going to be talking about our priorities. So we have in the strategic plan 5 strategic priorities that are very broad ways for us to kind of organize going about doing the work. So they're listed, of course, in the strategic plan, but I wanted to just take a minute to explain that these little boxes, I picked this little scheme and theme because there's a lot of unpacking to do here for us. Some of us were very involved in the packing and the creating of the strategic plan, but now it's time to really look at how do we unpack this in a methodical way and roll it out over the next 3 years, and how does that scaffold for our staff to incorporate professional development and also programming for the students so that they can see a progression of change as we unpack each of these things. So the first priority is empowering our students to become expert learners who have confidence to advocate for themselves and take responsibility for their learning. You're going to hear a bunch of strategies tonight on how we're going to do that in this first year, and then next year we'll have another set, and then the third year we'll have another set of activities. The second priority is to examine our current programs and practices for relevance and effectiveness. And this will help make a lot of our curriculum decisions moving forward, and will also help us have a clear focus for budgeting for curriculum materials. The third priority is to foster a positive school culture that honors the emotional well-being of all students and staff. And you've heard me say many times in Hampstead, like, the heart is so present and forward, and I love that this is going to be a formalized priority for us to maintain that and grow it. The fourth priority is to improve communication for staff and community stakeholders. There's some really exciting things in this priority that I think you're going to like when we talk about that in a minute. And then also the fifth priority is design learning environments to match our philosophies. And I feel like this is, every educator's dream, to have a priority that flat out says we will design learning environments that we see fit for pedagogy is just a little dreamy to have in your actual strategic plan. So I'm excited about all of that. You're next going to hear the principals talk about their action items at each building. So we're going to take one priority at a time and toggle back and forth between HCS and HMS.
So as Mrs. Tomaselli mentioned, that first priority is really focused on empowering students to become expert learners who advocate for themselves and take responsibility for their learning. So this year, HCS is really excited to empower our Universal Design for Learning team. They are ready to support the Central School staff in looking at ways to expand student ownership, voice, and reflection in their learning. By the end of the year, our teachers will have participated in instructional rounds, which is a professional development model where they will watch and support each other's practice. The Universal Design for Learning team, we're using a train the trainers model, and the Universal Design for Learning team goes out to network meetings and leadership meetings and coaching meetings, and then they come back and provide professional development for the rest of our team. So you'll see a lot of work in this area this year.
So at the middle school, we will also be using our Universal Design for Learning team, and they will be huge piece of identifying 3 areas that we want to focus on. You can't focus on it all, right? So we're going to start with 3 areas, and we really want to use staff feedback as to what those areas would be to start with. But those areas are around student voice and choice, so using things like choice boards for projects, self-reflection, and presenting a particular skill. So those are just examples, but again, staff feedback into that is really important. And part of that will be opportunities for students to reflect on their learning and developing a protocol where students become familiar with how to reflect on their learning and really get used to that and are doing that on a consistent basis. We really have a great opportunity at the middle school to use student voice and give students choice. And I think they're going to be really excited to do more of that. There is certainly some of that already happening. And then lastly, I know you've heard this when I did my entry plan, but really important piece of this we felt like was going to be that student principals leadership team where we are meeting with students on a quarterly basis, a representation of the building, to give us some feedback as to what's going well and what we can work on.
Moving into priority 2, we're going to focus on examining our current programs and practices for relevance and effectiveness. And the way HCS is looking to do that is that this year we will focus on inventories of our curriculum, programs, and interventions in reading and math. As Mrs. Milbury just mentioned, we can't do it all in one year, so this year we'll focus on English language arts and math. And as we look at our current programs, we're engaging in a pilot of our English language arts program, that's reading and writing. And we have a team consisting of 9 professionals that are piloting 2 programs to make a recommendation for a 23-24 school year purchase. In addition to examining our programs and practices, we'll be collaborating with the district leadership team to examine the staff evaluation model to develop something new that's going to give real-time feedback to staff that's relevant and meaningful, and we're looking forward to piloting that this spring.
So at the middle school, we'll also be looking very closely at the programs and practices that we are employing and working with Central School to do that same kind of inventory of our curriculum, and also making sure that staff have some feedback. You'll hear a lot of themes throughout this. Feedback into the curriculum that's happening, what's working well, what's not working well, and what we can do to improve things with the curriculum. And also working very closely with our subject level PLCs, professional learning communities, to be looking at instructional practices and how we can work on those and improve the craft of the instruction that goes along with those grade level PLCs, and also being able to collaborate 5th through 8th for that stream of the curriculum and making sure that it's aligned.
Priority 3 speaks to fostering a positive school culture that honors the emotional well-being of both staff and students. And so at the Central School, we're going to provide professional development to in mental health first aid to train some trainers. As I mentioned a moment ago about our Universal Design for Learning model, these folks will go out, they'll learn the program, and then they'll be able to come back and train the rest of our building in subsequent years. We're excited about that. It really is top-notch training for the trainers and our staff in how to respond to mental health issues with students. We're also very excited to develop opportunities for cross-grade level interactions, bringing back buddy classrooms. One thing the fourth graders love to do is come down and read with the kindergartners and first graders. I mentioned in my opening how much they're becoming little leaders. They're really excited to take that on and work with other students again. And then we'll also be bringing back student leadership opportunities, including student council and student-led school-wide meetings to foster that culture.
So at the middle school, we have a great opportunity for some of this work through our advisory program. So we will be focusing on that program and how we can create some consistency and common language throughout the school building with that advisory program. And one of those ways that we will be doing that is through a program that we, thanks to Mrs. Joseph, brought in actually a program that has a lot of awesome resources that were free to us, which was phenomenal, but called One Trusted Adult. So we'll be working on some training with that. It comes with some journals, with some great activities for kids, and that the whole school and each of the grade levels is kind of a little bit different, similar, but grade level specific and appropriate, but working together to have training with that, to make sure we have an advisory committee that will be working to make sure that we're, like I said, all on the same page and working together through a building and using similar themes with similar language. We are also really invested in mental health first aid for our staff and getting training, giving them training for that, since we know that there's a lot of mental health issues happening and a lot of staff don't feel like they have a lot of training in that, so focusing on that. As well as we have a great wellness committee who has already started to and will continue throughout the year to put together wellness activities for staff, so that on a regular basis there's opportunities for staff to participate in things like that.
Priority 4 focuses on improving communication for staff and community stakeholders. So we are very much looking forward to welcoming the community back to the Central School this year. Elementary schools thrive on volunteers and people to support us, and we're excited to bring them back. So this year we will also host a series of 4 community forums, and those sessions will be focused on raising awareness of the HCS building project, and we're really excited to bring back some parent involvement events. One that I'm really excited about is called One School, One Book, that gets the kids reading, our staff reading, and has some parent involvement opportunities as well. And then also to support communication, we will collaborate with the tech department to develop a dynamic website interface where you can find information quickly and the information that you need.
Another piece of the communication that exists and will exist district-wide that we will be working on is improved communication through social media. So both buildings working together on how we can best use social media and really get messages and information out to families on a regular and consistent basis. And then also communication through at least quarterly principal coffees so that community and parents have an opportunity to come in and sit and meet with administration and give feedback. We can talk about what's going on in the school and they can give feedback and ask questions at those times. We also are looking forward to having community members being able to come back into the building and really be a part of helping our middle schoolers grow and thrive.
And finally, our 5th priority is to focus on designing learning environments to match our educational philosophies. So HCS is actually really grateful to participate in a couple of different facilities studies to help us gain feedback about our usage of space and potential opportunities for usage of space. We also hope to gain additional insight throughout the year and through these studies around potential outdoor learning spaces. We will utilize the NEED grant, NHEED grant, to develop experiential learning opportunities, and we'll work with John Kelly, who's also a community member, to help us utilize our HCS weather station to its potential.
We'll be working hard, starting bright and early tomorrow morning, on scheduling and looking at our schedule. That's also a district-wide initiative, but at the middle school, we have a committee put together that will be taking a look at the schedule and how we can make improvements and best meet students' needs and make sure that the best instructional time is in the schedule so that students are getting what they need in all instructional places. And we also are going to be working to capitalize on our outdoor spaces. And we do have a staff member who is awesome with the weather station, and we'll be looking to train other staff members and keeping track of who's able to go out and use that just as a jumping off point, and then continuing to look at other options for outdoor learning, because certainly at the middle school we have a fabulous campus for that. So really wanting to make use of the space that we have here.
So I just wanted to clarify that the action items that you see tonight and that we're talking about aren't the only things that we'll be doing this year, but these are some of the highlights. There certainly will be a lot of other normal action items that we would have in a normal year and some other new things that we're doing, but we wanted to show you some of the bigger items for each priority. So on this slide, you'll see a timeline of deliverables. I thought it might be nice to kind of organize a few benchmarks throughout the year. So this September, of course, we've made our action items. We're establishing teams and timelines for this work. We're already underway with developing committees and scheduling some of those meetings. As you know, it's tricky to get teachers outside of the contractual day for coordination reasons between two buildings, but we're really diligently on it with the principals. We'll be doing an RFP for a new website this September, and we'll also be developing that protocol for student reflection and feedback so that our students have the skills they need to talk about their own performance and kind of set personal goals of where they want to see themselves in the next few months and over the course of the year. November, we expect to have the playground study done. Our social media strategies will be in place at that point. We will have the trainings for One Trusted Adult and mental health first aid done at that point as well. And we'll be starting to pilot a new evaluation model. That's a very ambitious goal for November. But it really needs to happen, so I think that's appropriate. In February, by February, we should have some scheduling task force recommendations. We might even have them by the end of January, so I put January on there. And our instructional rounds that they mentioned will be well underway at HCS as they learn about the UDL toolkit in all of the classrooms. By March, our ELA pilots will be done, and that's going to be very important to help us make a decision for curriculum in reading and writing materials for next year. We will also have done a number of wellness activities for the staff by the spring, and I'm excited about launching a new website. I think we are all going to really benefit from having architecture that makes sense, and we'll be piloting it and testing it with some parents, and if you're interested in being part of that, please let me know. We'll also be updating our professional growth model to include the evaluation system. So a professional growth model is your combination of PD and evaluation. That will be something we work on together this year, and we expect to have that done by the spring. And then finally in June, among other things, we'll have outdoor learning spaces kind of crafted out a little bit more, and our curriculum matrices for ELA and math will be done. So that is the end of our presentation. I'm open to any questions you have. We wanted to be as transparent as possible with our vision, hence the crystal ball logo on the slide. But we're very excited about doing this work this year, and I'm very grateful to have a strategic plan that is so kind of clear and exciting as an educator. I think there's some really wonderful pieces in the strategic plan.
Not a question, but maybe an ask of everybody. Looking at the timeline, you know, you've got milestones every other month, basically.
Mm-hmm.
In those in-between months, will you guys be providing us with some follow-up, some feedback on, did you make the milestones? What successes did you have? What do we need to develop? What do we need to work on? Just basically some feedback to us so we know how we're progressing through everything.
We could certainly do that either through weekly board reports or at board meetings, maybe a quick update.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the thing, you know, we have to, you know, be realistic about our expectations. And this is a conversation we have with the leadership team. This work, by all measure, is very, very aggressive. There's a lot here. And you know, as the year develops, you know, we're going to dig into this and realize, you know, maybe it was a little too ambitious to think we'd get to these certain items. And I think that communication piece is important to let the board know, we've completed this, we're working on this. Chances are we may not, we told you we're going to get to this in September, but we may not get there. So that communication piece is important.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go off of that with the objective number 2 and the idea that a lot of times you get initiative fatigue, that year after year there's new initiatives. And for me, that was about really looking at what's working, keep it, and if it doesn't, to get rid of it. And that if you're bringing in new things, like we're working on UDL, that we're not piling on more, but we're distributing it well. And often leadership teams think that they know what the teachers are thinking, but don't necessarily know. I do like the fact that you do have surveys, you do have a place in here. I don't want you beholden to the staff, but I want you to be receptive of feedback to them. So I think that's really good. And then talking about advisory, one trusted adult, having student voice and advocacy, I love that. These kids are struggling to have the conversations in person. And I think introducing into that is skills, those soft skills that they absolutely need. So I love your implementation of that. But as the superintendent was saying, I'd rather you do what you do really well and take stuff off the plate when it comes to these objectives than do a little bit piecemeal and just never have the feeling that anybody got anything done. But I think this is very well done. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, certainly. I'm very aware of initiative fatigue, and establishing teams to do this work is very important. Our ELA pilot, for example, has been underway since last spring. They are already, unboxing those pilot materials and using them with students, and those people have all opted in to do that, and they're excited to do that. So we're not going to overly tap any one person to do, 15 things here, but moving the work forward that we started last year is part of some of these things that are on the strategic plan.
Well, even the UDL, when you had the UDL people come in and they were excited and it was awesome, and that's great. That's a good combination of leadership and the teachers to bring something through a district. So I absolutely think you're going in the right direction. I just wanted to be clear on my thoughts on this, but I think you're doing what you should be doing. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I just looked at it and thought, they're going to be busy. But I appreciate that, you took this that we spent, because I was part of that team, we spent time working on, and you're actually, making sure that you have the steps of what you're going to do to follow through with that. So I definitely appreciate that. And I love the fact that you're doing that in teams, because doing that is going to get everybody on the same page and everybody excited and everybody involved. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
Definitely happy to see the money and time that invested last year is now we're seeing, it wasn't just a paperweight like Ms. Thompson said. It's not something we just throw out there, collect dust. I have some really direct questions, I think, more questions about what's in here. And Aaron, the first one's for you, is question about the student principals leadership team. What does that look like? What is the outcome? Because, I see as progress is minutes of the quarterly meetings. That's great that we're documenting, but what are we seeing? What are you expecting to see from the students as part of that?
So really to start, I'm a firm believer of kind of letting students drive the process. So the first part of it is making sure that we have a well-represented group, right? It can't be all 8th graders. It can't be all student council or all honor society. So students from each of the different committees, clubs, this school has a great variety of student involvement, and I love that. So I want to pick from that, and I want to pick from students from all grade levels and just hear what they're thinking and use that as a jumping off point. So I don't have purposefully a really strong structure to it, but the outcome is really just to listen to what they think they need, what do they want to see happening in the building, and then using that to go with, drive kind of the agenda for the next meeting, and maybe out of that comes, they go back to the clubs that they're in or the different programs they're involved in and have things that they can do there, but it also is things that Mrs. Joseph and I can do that we can share with the staff and just make sure that they feel like they're heard. Okay. So that's my intention.
So it's not just, say, the kids that are always, like, they're part of the National Honor Society. It's a diversity of students that range from those that are not usually in clubs to everything. That's what you're
Absolutely.
envisioning?
That's my intention. I will need a lot of help with that because I don't know all of the students, but there's plenty of staff here that know all these students in this building very well and will be able to help with that. And really, some of those students I would hope would be people that wouldn't necessarily volunteer, but the teacher says, well, that student's really quiet but has a lot of great things to offer. That would be a great choice, and just give some students that chance to feel really valued, because they're not the typical students that are always involved in everything. We have some students who are involved in everything, but we have students who aren't involved and just need to be asked to be involved. So that's my hope.
Okay. My next question is for you. We've heard for the last couple of years that mental health is a very important area, right? So we're investing in that. We're getting training for that. Just curious, and I don't know if this is a low number or not, so I'll say, why only 50%? Why not higher? Why not go for the gusto? Because, if we get to 55% or 60%, maybe we get to more kids, do more for the kids. So why not make that a higher number?
I think just because we're trying to be realistic with the time that we have and with the amount of different professional development that we have planned through the year, my first instinct was to say 100% of the staff, and I think that the reality is we have to make sure that we have the right people who can do the training. We first need to build a capacity for in-house trainers, and once we have that, we'll be able to get more, but we don't have that just yet, so we're just trying to be a little bit realistic. I completely agree with you. I would like to say that we're going to crush 50% and go above it, but I didn't want to come in June and have to say, yeah, sorry, we only got to half the staff, and here's why. We were just trying to be a little more realistic about that, but I agree with you. I mean, the goal certainly is to give everybody as much training, and they've asked for it, for sure, but the reality is we have to make sure that we have the capacity to do that.
And I would add to that, too, that mental health first aid is actually a national research-based program, so it has to be, the training has to be done with fidelity. It's a 7-hour program. And if you look at even with our early release days and our professional development days, that's a big chunk of time for everybody.
Yep. Understood. All right. Let's see. I might as well stick with you for just got a couple more for you.
Stay in the hot seat for a few more minutes.
Yeah. We had a lot of good results this summer with Nicole leading the training, the teachings at the farm, etc. Are we bringing any of that into this goal number 5 of the learning environments? Anything? I don't see it on here, so I'm just curious. Are we doing anything before the end of next summer?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked. Yes, that is the plan, and I think we probably mentioned that as a leadership team, we went and visited the farm so that we could come back, even if, because that was just our 7th and 8th graders, right? So just so that everybody had that awareness of that's just one example of what's out there, and just really using this year as an opportunity to encourage staff to go seek out those opportunities to get kids off campus for learning opportunities elsewhere and get back into what we had prior to. We couldn't do all of those field trips and really use those enriching activities. So that is definitely the plan, is to share that with staff, to talk about different options, to really encourage taking those field trips and educational experiences, because we all know that a lot happens here, but when we can get them out into the world for other experiences, that's powerful.
Okay, that's what I was going to springboard into what Mr. Thompson said at the end of the last year. Field trips are back. We're back. So what are we doing, to foster that and build those memories with kids?
I already signed off on a field trip for June, so they're starting to think about it, and I think it's going to take some encouragement too, but teachers are looking for that too. They're wanting to give kids those experiences, so I expect that we'll see a lot of those things happening, and I'll be excited to report out on what those are.
Awesome. This may be a question for both you and Dr. Cheney as well as Mr. Thompson. On number 4, improved communication for staff and community stakeholders. We know the majority of the community don't have children in our school systems right now. We know that majority, if not all, community members pay a lot in taxes. So they want to know, how is the money being spent, and how is, are we getting a good value of our investments? So I just ask, are there other ways that we can get that communication out? The board can help, of course, but how can we be a little bit more creative on getting that communication out beyond these areas here? Because I think there's a lot of opportunity. We're doing a lot of greatness, things that we haven't done in the past, that we should be celebrating. We should be communicating out results, all those things. So I just think that's something we should build on for number 4. I think we should be a little bit more aggressive there with that
action strategies. So,
Yeah, part of the way we do that is through developing a strategy for social media. I think the district has done an excellent job of utilizing social media, largely through Facebook. But there is a lot more work that can be done. We know that this is a way to reach the broader community. I was having a conversation with a colleague. You know, a lot of Gen Zers and millennials, they are on Instagram. We should have a presence on Instagram, if for nothing else, to help with our recruitment process with teachers. So I think part of this is expanding our presence on social media, having a strategy. I think it's also just good old-fashioned getting out into the community. Every opportunity that we have, Mrs. Milbury and I have had conversations about her entry plan and visiting, you know, the Civic Club or the Mothers Club or
right,
Hampstead Hearts and some of those organizations, showing up for community events so that people in the community that don't have children in the school, they learn our names and our faces,
right,
and we can engage them in those conversations. And the budget season is a perfect opportunity to do that. We'll talk about budget a little later on. The Hampstead Central School Building Addition project is another great opportunity to do that. So we know people don't always come to us. So if you're not going to come to us, we're going to come to you.
well, I think also just piggybacking on that, and something we used to have at the Central School, grandparents would come in and do readings, right? So are we bringing that back? Or what are the other ways? We just did the heroes, right? Well, what about other community members coming in talking about their professions? You know, there's things that we can be doing to bring people in to see we want to have that community involvement. So that's why I'm saying I think we need a little bit more here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And like I mentioned, you know, we're really excited to welcome back volunteers and things like that, to have guest readers, to have people come in. I'm looking at a couple of opportunities to invite families in for like a breakfast or something of that nature ahead of school starting. So we are looking at some of those possibilities with our kids and their adults.
Yeah.
And we have staff that have already talked about wanting to get out into the community. Our chorus teacher, for example, wanting to perform for the seniors and do things like that and get back into really involving members of the community that, as you said, they don't have students here, but they are a part of, you know, the school's a big part of the community. So it's exciting to hear staff talk about that.
Right. I think it's just also important because, you know, even this past weekend I got a text from somebody that said over to the community garden, they're going to be looking to raise money over there to bring students to be able to grow their vegetables in a greenhouse. So there's things there that they want to talk about, but that's because we've finally, I'd say, reached out to communities and we're, you know, getting more involved. So, you know, any way we can do that, Historical Society, there's so much more out there that is, you know, we haven't even unlocked yet.
And you know, I just wanted to share, we got some exciting news today that our ESSER 3 activity for clubs and enrichments, I had kind of front-loaded it for the school year, was just approved this afternoon. So we have, you know, an allocation designated for after-school enrichment, and that will include, you know, late busing, transportation for homework club that we were able to start last year. But I'm also excited because the way this grant is positioned, it's always for something kind of innovative and new. It's, you know, so what you're talking about with community outreach, I foresee this becoming, yes, part of our culture in our core class areas, but also part of our enrichment culture and our after-school club culture. I think we'll find, you know, teachers and kind of niche groups of students that might want to participate in things after school, off-site, and we now have the funding secure to be able to do that.
Perfect.
So I'm excited.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's it. Anybody else?
I just have to say, David, you asked some really great questions. Thank you. No, I'm serious. I appreciated that. My only question is, I'm wondering if someone can just explain a little bit about what the One Trusted Adult program is.
Sorry if Lynn answers that. She's really our resident expert so far.
Hi, I'm Lynn Joseph, the assistant principal. One Trusted Adult was a program that we actually received an email from the Department of Ed saying that they wanted as many schools in the state to jump on board and join in this program. So I had emailed the person and we went back and forth. And they have a great program that we're using, or we're going to start using with our advisory. A lot of people have already started that. They just want everybody in our school to have one trusted adult that they can go to, one trusted adult that can support them. one trusted adult that can be an advocate for them. Obviously, in a school, we have many trusted adults, but this program was just a great thing for us to be able to use the program that they have. They have books for each grade level that the students have received their little journals. I think they're maybe 40 or 50 pages. And the advisors will be working with them. They'll be talking about different things like how to be kind, how to self-reflect, how to set goals. And it just, when I started going through it, it just looked like a great program that we'd like to have working with our students here. There's some training for our staff. Some of them have already started looking at the different videos that they put out there. You can actually Google One Trusted Adult and get on and see what the program is in more detail. But it's just a way for our advisors to be able to work closer with our students. And the book is great because they'll have to, draw a picture, or write a story. And they're just really basic things that they can do, but it just helps them and helps our advisor to be able to have better conversations with them as individuals and a group. Our advisors also have the book, so they can do all the activities themselves and then be able to talk to the students.
I have one more question. Might be for Ms. Tomaselli, might be for Mr. Thompson, maybe both. Under number 2, with examining current programs, practices, relevance, and effectiveness. Relevance is a big word for me on this because in our growing technology age, it's not just about can you use your phone or your this or that, it's also how you use technology. I know for myself, for being a hiring manager for the last probably 10 to 15 years, I see there's a big gap in a lot of my peers in my industry and others of not just using like social media, but actually using technology. Simple things like using Excel, PowerPoint, Word, but also science, STEM, etc. I don't see anything on that in here per se. That maybe that's too detailed, but I'm wondering how are we investing in advancing that and maybe separating ourselves from other districts or not when it comes to science, technology, etc.
Yeah, that's a very loaded question, and I love it because it does point to what we're really, our mission here is to prepare these young people for, college or the workplace or maybe even the military or some other service that they want to do. But using those productivity skills and not just consuming technology, but being on the production side of technology is very important for me. And we need to do more training with our staff. We do have tech integrators, although we do have a vacancy right now. So if anyone wants to become a K-4 tech integrator, go on AppleTrack because we could really use one. So our technology integrators are responsible to help us unveil digital citizenship skills and responsible use of technology, but then they also help push the envelope with our staff to get to a place of production, not just consumption. And making that switch is a challenge, but that's kind of a very ambitious, wonderful goal to get our students to a place by the time they graduate 8th grade, they are savvy with a lot of the production suite. We use Google Tools for Education here, so they do have trainings in, the I don't want to say office products, but presentation tools, Word documentation, Excel, but we could always improve upon that. And then there's a whole other suite of technology-related skills that Mr. Remillard offers during a UA block in terms of 3D printing, CAD design. We've just recently accepted curriculum redesign from him, so we're excited to see what that will look like in 5th through 8th grade in terms of having a vision, putting it into a design software, and then actually creating it.
Okay.
But I agree completely. Those are the skills that will set this district apart from other districts.
Yeah.
And I would very much like to be in that place. So relevancy is a loaded word in this ambitious, action plan, but that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I don't want anybody to think I'm only speaking about, sending kids to college. Because
No,
I have friends of
workplace.
mine that are, a good friend, plumber, electrician at GC, and them using technology sometimes can be a struggle, just as much as somebody that going to college. I've seen struggles with technology, so I think that's something that we're not investing enough in.
One of the pieces of this too is we've been, last year we visited Pinkerton, I visited twice, and I brought Melissa Karpinski, our 5th and 6th grade school counselor, with us the second time, purposefully so that we could start thinking of ways to get our 5th and 6th graders over to that enormous high school to see those CTE programs at a younger age, because those CTE programs are hiring, you know, from junior year. Those seniors are already hired into the workplace in many of those CTE programs. And so we want to make sure our Hampstead kids are very well positioned and aware of all of the offerings of CTE at Pinkerton. There are a lot of programs. And so that's part of the relevancy too, is for them to see what's in front of them, you know, 9th through 12th grade.
Yeah. And I think those are things, back to the community involvement, those are things that, you know, provide success out there in the community of what we're doing. You know, not all students are going to go to college. I know a student that graduated as senior, already making 6 figures, doing, it's called general labor, but, you know, he's running his own business. He's
Skilled
19.
labor is a very high demand area right now.
So these are things, just questions, so I appreciate that. Yes, a very loaded question, but.
I love it. Keep them coming.
I don't have anything else. Anybody? All right. All right, we'll move on to next discussion, and thank you very much. Again, Mr. Thompson, the 2022-2023 school calendar.
Yeah, so you'll find in your packet, I've included a draft revision to the board-approved school calendar for 22-23. Again, the original calendar was approved by the board on April 12, 2022. In that calendar, we added several early release days. The purpose of the early release days is to provide professional development to staff. For convenience, aligned to Pinkerton's early release day schedule. So some of the feedback that I've received from parents as well as board members is really linking, providing more information to the community about our early release day times. So if you go to the Hampstead School District website under calendar, we've actually included a tremendous amount of detail about the dates of the early release, the release times, when buses depart, kindergarten times. There's a wealth of information. So I received feedback that it would also be helpful if this were on the school board calendar. Well, any revision to the school board calendar, any board-approved document really should go back to the board for their approval. So I present you a draft calendar with one addition, and that is under the title of the calendar. You'll see it says, click here for early release day bus departure times. So anyone that's interested in having the early release times can click on that. There was really two reasons why we added this link. One, honestly, is there's not a whole lot of space on the calendar to add the early release times. And two, I think it's also helpful to be able to click on that link to get updated information. And a great example is we will have snow days throughout the year. They will impact our end of school date, but that date is typically set by the board in April. So as we have snow days, we can put a tentative or expected last day of school on our website, and anyone who clicks on this calendar will be able to, that calendar link will be able to see that. This way, we're not bringing this calendar to the board more than once a year. So I present this to the board. I welcome your feedback and would look for potentially some action on the part of the board.
I'll just say that I'm very happy to see that we're actually using the district calendar that can be updated, and you can see everything that's going on, changing games, anything like that. Because I know as a parent and as a board member, I would go to that almost a live calendar and it'd be blank. So that we're finally using that, and I know we're limited on resources right now in the IT department, so I appreciate the work that's been done there to do that. So that's my first response to this. Anybody?
I love it because I was one of the ones that kept asking me.
I didn't want to say it.
I just think it's important that, you know, parents know, because it's definitely different than it's been, so I think this is great. And the way you put it in here is very easily digestible, so I appreciate that. I was wondering how you were going to fit it on there, so that works.
You have no idea the effort, but I appreciate the feedback.
My only small critique, and it's something really small on this, is I would just ask to put the link down at the bottom, because it's kind of hard to read in there. That's the only small thing. But having it there, the link to the calendar, is amazing. So.
I was kind of comment on the same thing. It kind of blends into the title at the top.
Yeah.
You know, if we could highlight it or pull it down to the bottom or make it somewhat more noticeable. I didn't see that at first. So I'm just concerned that other parents might not And then if it's possible, I mean, where the early releases are down below listed, if we can make that a hyperlink as well, so they can click on it there as well in case they try to click where it says early release and it brings them to that same link.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
I don't know if it can be done with what we have right now on our website. Maybe that's something for the new website. That's something to consider.
All right. Unless there's any other comments, we are going to be looking for a motion to accept the new calendar with the revised edits
Absolutely.
as requested by the board.
So moved.
Second? Second. Any
Wait a
discussion?
second on that, sorry.
Got it.
Dr.
Jason
Hubner?
and then Dr. Hubner.
Thank you.
Any comments, discussions? All approved? Raise your hand. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. All right, let's see, moving along. All right, we're going to go to the HCS edition plan design discussions. There's a few pieces to this I think we should discuss. We can give some updates of meeting that we had today, which was very valuable and some good information. So do you want to take that, Mr. Thompson, just talk about what we discussed, what you heard from community members?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So this evening, we held our most recent Hampstead Central School Building Committee meeting. Again, this is a group of both school district staff, board members, as well as community and parents as well. And the purpose of the group is to act as a sounding board and an advisory group, both to the administration and to the school board. So at this evening's meeting, we had our owner's project manager from Trident come and talk about the role of an owner's project management manager in order to help facilitate the building project. It was very informative. It was also shared with us sort of the timeline for the future documents that will be provided to the district, which includes, we had initial renderings done by the architect. We'll have more formalized renderings from the architect that are coming shortly. We'll also get more firm pricing. As we're aware right now with inflation and supply chain issues, pricing is difficult to do. So our owner's project manager is working very closely to ensure that we get the best pricing for the project. We also discussed at the meeting, we had a walkthrough from the New Hampshire Department of Education who walked through as part of the building aid process to look at the central school. We were able to point out several of the deficiencies. Again, we're talking about student and staff safety. We're talking about special education space. And we're talking about instructional space in the form of a library media center. Last week, we also had members of the New Hampshire School Administrators Association come on site as part of our facility study. They were at both the central school and the middle school, taking measurements, evaluating the space, speaking with staff. And that will be part of a facilities study that will be given to the board in November. So there's a lot of information that will be coming the board's way in the next month. And I think the project, in terms of the timeline that we first presented to the board, we're on track.
Yeah, I'd say that's the first thing. I think I showed it a little bit at our last meeting with the owners and architects. Like, we'd like to have this information right now. We know that there's a lot of work going into this, but it is good to know that we are keeping on the schedule that was communicated in May and June of what we're going to accomplish. So I'd say to the board members, the schedule that we received in that May-June timeframe, we are still on track for that. I'd say we're a little ahead on some of the areas. I know that we want, to your point, pricing sooner, and we've asked for that. So we are getting an update at the end of September where we are with the more finalized drawings and I'd say the first pass at pricing. We asked to be even faster, but to what Mr. Thompson talked about, we had discussions with the architect, we had it with the PMO and with the contractor that the pricing is a bit hard to do right now because of all the inflation and everything else. but we're still pushing on that to get that sooner. And as, reminded tonight from the PMO, if he was to give pricing a month ago, it'd be different than it's going to be next month, just because of the price inflations, et cetera. And they do want to give the best price for the community so that we're coming into November, December with what we expect is going to be on the warrant. He doesn't want to revise it in June, revise it in July, et cetera. He still feels confident that it's still under that $7.5 million that we talked about. But, it's going to get we're going to go through a lot more detail in the coming months where we can take out some cost or where's the risk in the design. So.
And I think it's also important to know, you've said this before, but this is a completely new concept and a completely new design based upon the need that the district has, particularly around
Right.
areas of safety. So these things take time to develop these plans. A year ago, the board had made the decision that they were going to put forth a very similar warrant article to the one the previous year. So it was a matter of updating, it was a matter of getting updated pricing. What we're talking about is creating something brand new, something different, and it takes time.
Right.
You don't want to rush these things.
Right. Well, I think in the last meeting we had, and again, some of the stuff the board hearing for the first time with the architect, we did another walkthrough. There were some other additional questions they had and initial assumptions that we made sure were flushed through when, and again, Mr. Dowd, maybe you want to speak a little bit more to this, when we talked about the watering system as far as bringing water into the building. There were some things that we talked about of how to reduce some pricing, so we're looking at even bringing the price down more if possible. But I don't know if there was a big discussion, I believe, that warrants maybe your more knowledge about the watering system and how we'd be bringing that in and what some of those decisions were.
In terms of the capacity for the
hydrant.
building to be able, of the hydrant in the building to actually be able to support sprinklers and that sort of thing. So the current line from Emerson Ave does not support sprinkler system. We have holding tanks in the building. The line under Emerson Ave is now bigger than what it was before, so we have a greater capacity. So at some point we should look to upsize that, and if the renovation does go through, it is part of that addition. In addition to that, we would, I'm speaking with the fire department, they recommended a fire hydrant as well in proximity to the school, which would be very, very helpful. So those are things that are good. And if we did go with a sprinkler for the entire building at some later point, obviously the new sections of the building would be sprinkled. The existing building would not need to be, but we'd have the capacity and build that capacity in to be able to adapt that system at a later point. So.
Right, and I think also having that discussion that we had where talking about where do we want that main control with the thought that, we do have to bring water to the new areas. So we're going to have to go to, if you think about how the water comes in, it comes in right across from St. Anne's.
Across the meeting house.
Right, across from the meeting house. And there was discussion around where do we bring in the main controls, because no matter what, you're going to have to span the water to both sides of the building, but knowing that we're not going to put sprinklers throughout the building. But in case in the future we decide to vote on that, what's the best place to do that so it'll be cost effective in the future? So we had a lot of discussions, a lot of changes or potential changes to that. I thought we had and this is why some of this is taking a bit longer, because we're changing what we expected, a year ago, 2 years ago to now. There was another one that we talked about that we're evaluating right now is the septic, right? It is an older septic. We all agree. We also discussed, and we're evaluating that as, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But do we put that in there? So we're evaluating right now, we're talking about, do we not put that as part of the bond? Because if it's not broken yet and we get an evaluation, so that's part of what we're doing as well, as having an evaluation of that septic to say, have a professional come in, do a lot of testing to say, what is their thoughts on that? So that way if we don't, that'll reduce it by, whatever that dollar is. So those are the things that we're evaluating, why those plans are not in front of us, because even though it's not part of the rendering, it is still part of the financial plan of what we were bringing. So there's some more evaluation being done over this course of this month, so we can bring something that's going to be what we actually decide to bring forward to the voters. So I think those were the big highlights I had, Mr. Thompson, from the construction committee. Anything? All right. So really no action yet. I know that in the last meeting I had brought up that in the past we have voted to spend, upwards of $2,000 for marketing. Usually that's in the month of February. I did call around to a couple of the papers for, if we did inserts, once we have more finalized renderings, once we have more, granular pricing. We would be looking at something much smaller than $2,000 to do like an insert in some sort, or a flyer inside of the paper. So I would still suggest that we do that. It'd probably be around that $400 to $500 range. We could do a few of those between now and the time we vote, rather than spending just $2,000 on direct mailers. Spread that out with more information and highlights. So not looking for a vote tonight, because I think we need to wait until we have more information next month. But that's something that I would still like us to consider, is once we have that information, instead of doing $2,000, I think we can spend less than that and get more information out there throughout the months. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, comments on that, but no action yet. Don't have a flyer we're going to put together right now. We still have information we're going to be gathering over the next month, but I think that's a more effective way to do it for the taxpayers, as well as effective to get the communication out.
Yeah, I think it's good to spread that communication out over time, as opposed to just a real big push right before the vote.
All right. So I look forward to next month's construction meeting. We had a good talk. So thank you. If there's anything else right now on that, okay. All right, next up, Mr. Dowd to talk about the Primex cap proposal.
Yes, Primex is our risk management provider, and if you will, this would be commonly referred to as our insurance provider for workman's compensation and property and liability coverage. We have an opportunity to enter into a 3-year agreement with Primex for coverage on both workers' comp and property and liability for a max not to exceed increase annually of 10%. The 10% on workers' compensation and 9% on property and liability. We are currently on the tail end of an existing 3-year agreement with Primex, wherein we are capped at 7%. And I think the first question that this board should be asking, if you're not asking, is, well, gee, if we're in a not to exceed at 10%, what's the likelihood, because we're in this agreement, we're going to hit 10%? What I've done is I've provided a schedule of the current premiums on both, and you'll see that we had, for workers' comp, we had an increase 19 to 20 to 2021 of 6%, subsequent year 1%, subsequent year it went down. Property and liability, we had 1 year where it went up 7%, next year 2%, next year 7%. So we're in an agreement currently with them to not to exceed 7%, and they've been below that on both for a majority of the time we've been in the agreement. That doesn't say that that's what we've actually paid. You can see that we have some premium holidays and some credits there as well that essentially we share in, I'll say profits, we don't share in profits, but we share in their excess funds. So we get a refund on that. So even the increases that we have of 6% or 7% really aren't what we actually pay. Most often we pay less than that. So we've been very happy with Primex. They offer a very unique solution to municipalities in the state of New Hampshire. There are some implications, I won't go into it, I can if you need to put to sleep sometime, about having private insurance and liability. And essentially you can be liable, even though we have municipal immunity, up to the limits of your insurance policy if you have what we'll call a private or traditional insurance plan. Primex is not insurance. We consider it insurance, but it's not. It's a risk management pool. So as a result of that, we were able to better preserve our municipal immunity to the greatest degree possible. And it has offered us protection, and I've witnessed situations where it has helped districts out tremendously to be able to fully leverage that municipal immunity to its maximum advantage. So that said, I will be asking the board to consider locking in with Primex for 3 years at, again, not to exceed amount of 10% on workers' comp, not to exceed of 9% on property and liability. The worst part about this is that if you look at the back of the packet, for each policy or each coverage type, there is a resolution that they've requested the board adopt if you're willing to move forward with the coverage plan for 3 years. So, in addition, by the way, to having some liability protection, they're generally affordable and offer tremendous training opportunities specific to our space, if you will, specific to our area. And so they've proven to be very, very good in that regard. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is Primex the main provider for New Hampshire school districts?
I would say they probably have a majority, if not pretty close to it.
Okay. And then are there other companies that you've looked at in comparison to Primex?
Really don't have any competition to Primex. You have a lot of commercial insurance opportunities,
Okay.
but that produces some potential liability exposure. Where
This product's designed for schools and to eliminate risks within schools.
Exactly, to maximize our municipal immunity protections in place, not just for us, but for other municipal entities, counties, local governments, all similarly situated organizations.
And just to add to that too, as an educator, one of the things I appreciate about Primex is the professional development that they offer in risk mitigation. We have access to pretty much unlimited professional development that is free to the district that we take advantage of. Even at our summer leadership retreat, we partnered with Primex to provide our leaders training around risk management, and it was free of charge.
So if we went with another vendor, you would then have to replace that professional development, which would then cost more money.
Yeah, I don't know of another vendor, to be honest with you, that would offer that level of service.
Okay.
Did you say 10% or 9%?
It is 9% for property and liability and 10% for workers' comp.
Oh, okay.
And I think those rates are, and I don't want to speculate, but I would guess that those rates are a little bit higher this time just based on the inflationary cycle that we're in, some uncertainty. Whereas before we had the 7%, and they pretty much stayed within that. Well, they've stayed within that, and they've done better than that for a majority of the 3-year term that we're just now ending.
So what would happen if we don't do this? What if we don't vote to lock in for 3 years?
So if we had a situation where we had, let's say, some property liability claims that raised our risk profile, then they could come in with a rate that would be higher than that 10% or 9% of the property and liability. That would essentially be the only risk.
We'd be paying the same the next 3 years, correct?
If we went with this, we would be paying not more than 10% over the previous year.
Right.
If we didn't go with this agreement, then we would be subject to market, well, not to their market, but to our risk and the general risk of pool. And I guess the best way to explain this is that if they have a lot of entities that enter into 3-year cap type agreements, like we're looking at right now, and not everyone qualifies for this, we do.
Yep.
But if we're not part of that, let me put it this way, if we are part of that, then we're capped, right? But if our risk exposure is higher than the 10% or higher than 9% in a year, we're still capped at that. Who's picking up the rest of that risk?
Right.
The rest of the pool that's not under a cap agreement, that's not under a not to exceed agreement. So we could have the exposure that if we had a bad year, our risk profile goes up, but also if we're not locked in with them, then it's possible that we could end up absorbing some of the risk that other capped or not to exceed clients have. Gets spread out a bit and we have to absorb it.
And seeing that they're doing 10 and 9% now versus their 7% before, it's like everything else. Inflation's going up, so they're attributing that. That's why it's 10, 9% now.
Yeah, I think that would be a primary driver of it. Of course, claims are subject to inflation and all of that. As you can see, though, I mean, for at least half the time, they've been under, well, more than half the time, they've been under our current
Right.
not to exceed.
Right.
Even went down 1 year.
Right.
And with the benefit of the premium holiday, I didn't even put the percentages in there for the premium holiday, because really the only percentage that we're looking at is actually on the premium. But 1 year we received 20,000 in premium holiday, another year 7,000, 15,000, so it's quite a bit.
Okay.
That will benefit from them being essentially a not-for-profit organization. And there may be cheaper, there may be less expensive commercial policies out there, but again, those commercial policies can tend to get very expensive if you end up having claims under them. We don't get that training. we're able to benefit from. And I know right now we can call them up, in fact we have, to do different assessments of our facilities. So if we have a question on it, they'll come in, and it's really nice to have their best practice perspective from, again, from our space. You know, we're not a factory. We're a school with a lot of different areas of exposure, let's just say.
Is 3 years the only option?
Yes.
And you mentioned the inflation cycle, you know, should that go down in 2 years? You know, we're locked into that 10% and 9% for a third year. Just wanted to see if there was other options.
Yeah, we're locked into the 10% as a not to exceed, but we're currently locked into, or we're currently ending a cycle where we're locked into 7% not to exceed. And there's only 2 years that they hit that 7% on one of our policies, one of our programs. The rest has been 6%, 1%, minus 1%. Right. And then on property and liability, it was 7%, 2%, and then 7%. So really, they haven't hit that max most of the time. And I expect they're just being overly cautious on the 10%. Can't guarantee it, but it seems from an actuarial perspective, and that's why they like to get these agreements in place, because they then turn around and they're able to work with their underwriters to further mitigate risk, and this gives them some certainty on that front.
Right. Okay. So I'll be looking for a motion, unless there's any other questions. And I don't think we want to read the entire thing, but it's there. So I'll go ahead and make the motion to enter into a 3-year agreement to not to exceed the 10% and the 9% per the resolution outlined on the back page of both of these. And this will be available to the public to see what the exact wording is.
I'll second it.
And it just, I know you're in discussion, but you're essentially adopting the resolutions?
Correct.
As part of this, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Perfect.
Any discussions, comments? All right. All that approve? Dan? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, what we look forward to every year, budget process discussion by Superintendent Thompson.
All right, thank you. In the board packet, hold on, just make sure this is working. In your board packet, you'll find a draft of the 2023-2024 budget development for the Hempstead School District. So budget season is upon us. Really, there are 3 goals to this work. The first goal is to ensure that we are educating our children to the highest standards. That's really an umbrella. That's not just about instruction. It's about making sure that we have school facilities that are in top-notch condition. We have technology for children. Children that require support have the services available to them. So that's that sort of overarching goal. We strive to educate children to the highest standards. The second goal is for us to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. We recognize that public education is funded largely through local tax effort. And as a result of that, we scrutinize every nickel and penny that goes into this operating budget. The process that we developed is, we've adopted a zero-based budgeting model where we build the budget each year from the ground up. We don't necessarily look at the previous year's budget as a driver of the budget we're developing. And the third goal is to ensure the maximum amount of transparency as possible. That will include, updating our website to provide community members with as much information about all of the proposed expenditures as possible. It also includes, having conversations with community members about any question that they may have in terms of the school budget. So to walk you through that process, and I'm not going to go through the entire document, this document will be posted online for community to see. But the budget process has already begun. The building principals are working with their teachers and staff members, and so are our directors, to build the budget. They will review that budget, and they'll enter it into our software program before the end of the month. October 3rd through 7th, that will be an opportunity for our principals and our directors to meet with Mr. Dowd and ourselves. We will go line by line, item by item, scrutinizing all of the requests that are made by the principals and directors. Then we'll come here on October 11th for a board meeting where we'll have, we're still in the budget construction process, but the goal will be to give the board an insight into the direction that the budget process is going. Then we'll have a budget workshop session on the 18th. And really what that is the board will be able to meet with our principals and directors individually. They'll walk them through the budget. They'll provide them with an understanding of what the priorities are for their building or their department. On October 25th at the board meeting, we will have school department presentations. We'll talk about budget drivers, challenges, goals, enrollment data. We'll also talk about budget changes. So, last year, as part of this transparent process, we created what we call sort of a new or deleted items spreadsheet, and that really tracks any new expenditure over $500 or something that we are taking out of the budget, because that really is a question that we get a lot from community members is what's new in this budget? What wasn't in the year before that we need to be aware of? That will be sort of one-stop shopping. You can look at that one document to see what has been included that wasn't in the budget the year before. Again, we'll walk through November. There'll be continued conversations at the board. And then November 22nd, finalized budget numbers and review at the board meeting. And then it would be the goal to have the board approve the budget, making it the board's budget on December 13th. And then from there, we head into January, where we'd be looking at January 10th as the possible budget hearing and hearing on the bonds. And then we would have our first deliberative session on February 7th. And then March 14th would be our second deliberative session, which essentially is voting day. So that's the schedule that we've created. We've worked off of last year's schedule. I will entertain any questions that the board may have in regards to the budget development process for 2023, 2024.
Anybody? While Dr. Hubner is turning on his microphone,
yeah, well, the only question I had is for the work session, because I'm on there for 2 different things, and Nicole is on there for 3 different things. Can we have it longer so that we're able to space the people out, or?
Well, I'm not on it at all, so I don't know if that.
Yeah, and we can certainly make it. We'll have a schedule so that folks are able to get around to the various groups that they need to, and we can certainly make that.
I don't mind coming earlier because I'm on 2 different things to make your life easier. So.
Yeah, we can certainly finalize a schedule.
Thank you.
I'd have one request to have information ahead of this, and I think it's something we can get even soon from Mr. Dowd, which is, can you typically prepare a document that shows all the last few years where we actually, budget versus actuals, and then you have here's what we're proposing for the next year's budget. Can you go ahead and get that for us, minus what you're going to be proposing in the upcoming budget?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes it's overwhelming to go into one of these meetings. We're looking at what's new, but also, kind of critiquing the years past.
Yeah.
So is that something you can prepare for us and get us to sometime
Absolutely.
in the next few weeks?
Absolutely. I'm looking to have our numbers final, and I didn't want to issue, I haven't even posted anything to the website. We will have probably, I'm sure, a couple changes from the DOE and the DRA to our final submitted numbers, which we'll talk about after this.
Yeah.
And once those are in, then we don't have multiple mixed financials hanging out there. But it would be good if the board wanted to take a look at it, notice any trends or any questions that you have up front. It'd be helpful to be able to address outside of actual budget preparation on your end.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd ask is, instead of having a PDF, if we can get that in some sort of Excel format, because I know I'd like to go through there and do trends and look at what, questionable things that we've voted on in the past that maybe are
going to be needed in the future, or we're going to anticipate it's going to be even more. So if we can get that in Excel format versus a PDF.
That's doable, with the exception, with the caveat that in Excel, when I do a data dump, remember the old WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get?
Yep.
So it comes out, the data comes out with no formulas.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So you'd have to work the formulas or however you want to do your analytical review.
Okay. The next thing I was going to ask is if we can get this communicated, Mr. Thompson, out in, a variety of ways, social media, get it also out to, on the website. I think if we can get it, there's the town community communication letter. I think getting this out, because as we've talked about before, we want people to come in and, ask questions during these sessions. With the session on the 18th, the work session, we've had a member or members of the community come in. We invite them to come in during those and hear what we're talking about and ask questions if we want, So I think if we can get this out there soon, people can see what's out there and when, these dates are.
I would agree, absolutely.
Anything else in addition to that, anyone? Questions on the schedule? I know there's one question here for October 4th. Traditionally, we don't need that. Traditionally, we don't, the only reason I would say we would want that is if we have any questions about, what Mr. Dowd sends to us ahead of time, but I think we can email him and ask him those questions, and I don't think we really need to meet, but if anybody thinks we need that work session. All right, there you go.
All right, thank you.
All right. And we'll move on to an even funner topic. Unencumbered fund balance review with Mr. Dowd.
Thank you. And I'm not 100% certain, but I might even be able to get this up on the screen behind you.
You mind speaking up also just a little bit?
Certainly. I might even be able to get this up on the screen behind you.
All right.
It's going to be helpful. So I'm going to talk about unencumbered fund balance, and just to refresh everyone's recollection, we have what we call a surplus, which is essentially an excess of revenue and fewer expenditures than we had anticipated. We then have an amount that we would return to the town. So and it's right up behind you there. So the unencumbered fund balance is that last line, that return to town taxpayers line, which this year is $2,279,000. And I'd like to explain a little bit about how we got there. And talking about our total gross surplus, which is simply our expense surplus and our revenue surplus. When we have a surplus, it's typically not from one source. It's not because we've been able to save money or we've spent less than we've budgeted. Here we spent less than we budgeted. That's the expense surplus of $2,205,000. We also had a revenue surplus of $915,000, which means we took in more revenue by $915,000 than we had actually anticipated receiving. So, we'll go through the breakdown of those, and if you wouldn't mind going down just a little bit, Nicole, we'll go over the actual detail, expense, and revenue sections here. I'm not going to go line by line. I'm just going to hit on some of the higher points here, especially as we're getting into budget season. It's helpful to be able to understand where some of our excess is coming from. And on the expense side, that's the $2,205,000. We had salaries favorable of $478,000. That's largely from unfilled positions, and that's split between our professional staff and our support staff largely. Insurance, $165,000 favorable. That is due in part to the fact that we got a budget number, and the amount that we actually paid was less than that. We got a not to exceed number, and our rate was lower, so that was helpful there. FICA, retirement, health, we're favorable by $312,000. The next big line is outside tuitions, $831,000, and about $600,000 of that is on the regular education side, and the remainder is on the special education side. And that has to do a lot with the fact that when we have lower enrollment with Pinkerton, that's a one for like we don't have a student, we don't pay the money, and so we had a lot of students that we had anticipated who did not continue at Pinkerton. They may be back this year. I'm waiting for our final enrollment numbers to see where we're at there. We did notice a trend, even within our schools, of having a lot of students who had gone out either to private schools, homeschooling, to reenter, particularly here at the middle school. On the revenue side, we'd spoken about this back in June as well. On the revenue side, we've had favorable tuition of about $55,000 over what we anticipated. Special education aid, which was great, $479,000 there. We're low on Medicaid reimbursement by $32,000. We had some wind down proceeds from SAU, the combined SAU 55, giving us $147,000. And we received a refund from Health Trust of $244,000 and an Eversource rebate of $9,000, almost $9,000. So those are the big numbers. The SAU wind down proceeds, Health Trust refund, and Eversource rebate really are one-time items only. I wouldn't anticipate that we'll be seeing those again. Hopefully we will, but no guarantee there. So that's where we're at. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on that. And when we look at the expense and the revenue surplus, that gives us a total gross surplus. From that, we have to look at the fact that we have a capital reserve contribution that the voters had voted, $500,000, so that comes off the balance that we returned to the town. We had a lot line adjustment that was approved by the voters. That comes off the balance that's returned to the town. We also had a balance of $250,000 for our fund balance retention last year, which was the board voted maximum amount this year. So last year was $250,000. This year it's $574,000. So that means that the additional amount that we're retaining is $324,000, which leaves us a balance to return to the taxpayers of $2,279,000. So I hope this gives a feeling or an idea of where our surplus is coming from, where our unencumbered fund balance is coming from.
Makes sense. Board members, any questions, comments?
No, that's pretty clear.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dodd.
Hoping for this every year.
What's that?
I like this. Hopefully we'll do this every year.
Exactly.
No guarantees.
It'll be good. All right. So next one is on the school board goals discussion. So we met just before the school board meeting today to talk through this. We will present this at the next board meeting, what our goals for this year. I'll name off a few things that we went through, try to read my chicken scratches here on what we went through. For the facility improvements, we are going to be looking to add some wording around evaluating and implementing the number of reports and studies that are going on, audits going on right now, so that we're going to evaluate those this year and implement them this year. It'll be really good because this, again, budget season, so if we see anything, we'll look to also bring that into our budget. But as we've done in the past, when we found some issues, we fix them immediately. We're not waiting to shore up a door or a window until next budget season. We look for where we can find that now. Strategic plan, we're already implementing that, so we're going to change that from create to implement. Our budget and effective use of resources, combining that because we want to make sure it's really one, create a budget and be effective with how we're utilizing our resources for the taxpayers, students, et cetera. We will be taking off the SAU 55 support. We do support our SAU 55. However, now that we're not, a single district, now that we're a single district a year into it, we're going to take that off of our goals. That's just going to be our nature and our culture to do. Our innovative practices, we are going to be rewording this a bit for our universal design. Is that something that's going to be a practice for everybody in the school system? So we want to make sure we're supporting that. And outdoor community-based learning. Instead of exploring it, we've done a number of solutions, a bunch of examples that we're actually implementing it. So we're going to continue to implement and grow it here in the district. We think that's going to be very valuable for our students and our teachers and everybody in the community. So it's kind of an overview of what we're going to be doing for our goals, but we'll present it officially at our next meeting in 2 weeks. Did I miss anything? Anything in addition to that? Good. All right. Last one from us before we turn it over for board comments, correspondence, is the contract negotiations update. We did have our first meeting. The other board members, save for myself, are participating in that. So we did have our first opening negotiation discussion last week. We have a number of negotiations coming up. as well as a number of meetings from the board members even before this. We're going to have another next week to talk about some of those negotiations and some of the items that are we feel are important for us as a school district and community. Anything in addition to that, members that are part of the negotiations? All right. And again, the goal is to wrap those up this year so that they will be a part of warrant articles for the March timeframe to vote on. So with that, go left to right for board comments, correspondence. Dr. Hubner? No? Mr. Jared?
I think it was last week, maybe the Monday before, but we had our first energy committee meeting for the town. Mr. Mackey and I attended with some stakeholders from the community. Basically just the initial meeting was to set up a schedule, set up an itinerary for upcoming meetings. But we also did take the opportunity to walk the town hall in specific and look at different opportunities for them on how we can conserve energy, save money, potentially pass savings on to our taxpayers. Part of the plan is we're going to be reaching out to other parts of the town, other buildings in the town, such as the library, the civic building, multiple buildings in town, and start taking a look building by building at opportunities for them to save money and pass that savings on to our taxpayers. Really good conversation, really good meeting. A lot of energy involved in it, a lot of enthusiasm. I'm a dad, I had to. But really just for the first meeting, we set up a lot of ground rules and a lot of ideas on where we're going to take this, and just very optimistic about what's to come from it.
All right. Sounds like that discussion was pretty electric and energizing, so.
Oh,
All right. For myself, let's see. Went to the open house. I have a new child that's entering the school system. I'll say that the reason why I'm saying this is not to brag that I have another child out of the house, but it's that it was great to go to the 60s wing as a parent for the first time as a parent and not be drenched in sweat. So it was cool, not cold. It was just cool and comfortable. So that was great to see. So kudos to what we've been able to do for the 60s wing there as a community. Went to the first HMS girls soccer game, which was pretty amazing. They won 5-1. So looking forward to hearing more updates from the school systems on the wins and all the sports going on. So that was great. Again, the building committee been to a number of meetings, had a number of discussions with architects, et cetera. So and that's all, I think, going in the right direction. And then lastly, Aaron and I were able to cook for the teachers and staff the day before, I think it was the day before the first day of school. So that was really great to be able to serve hot dogs, hamburgers, drinks, and it was really hot to cook. It's not the reason why I don't have my full beard anymore. I did not burn it off, but it was great to be there and see a lot of smiling faces and just be able to serve the staff. It was definitely a lot of fun, and hope that we continue that in more ways than one.
So I attended both open houses, and it never ceases to amaze me how these teachers remember their children, the students that they've had like 5 or 6 years ago, and they're hugging all the students, and it was just really great to see that energy and all the smiles.
I'm going to one-up that. My kindergarten daughter's teacher had my 19-year-old, and we've referred to her in her short name, and the teacher said, "Oh, Annabella?" So she was like, she knew, so 19 years, 15 years later, whatever. So we just have some great teachers here that remember, no matter how big or small the students are, and so it was great.
So I, with David, attended the opening day for the schools, which was pretty awesome. There was a little baseball game going on here. I think somebody almost knocked somebody out, but other than that, it was good. It was a little frightening because I was right behind the base.
We won't talk about the songs.
We won't talk about the theme songs, but it was great. It was a really good. It was great to see the staff so energized and happy to be there, and so I loved it last year and I loved it this year, so that was great. And like David said, helped at the barbecue for the staff So that was great as well. It was hot, but it was great. And we had some really great student helpers that day, so I really, really appreciate their help. They did a great job. We tasked them with putting the stuff together, and they did it like champs. So, and Lynn had an amazing hat that I think we need to try to figure out for next year, for all of us. That's it.
All right, good. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Ms. Thompson.
All right, there is actually no personnel report for this evening. So moving into the superintendent update, we are off and running. We have started the 2022-2023 school year, and despite the issues with transportation we've talked about, it's been a really strong start. As board members had mentioned, we welcome back all staff right here in this room on Thursday, August 25th. It really is such a great opportunity. We get everyone in the room. That's our teachers, it's our support staff, it's our custodians, it's our bus driver, it's our food service, because we are all play an integral role in the education of the children here in Hampstead. It was very lighthearted, it was fun. Chairman Smith did hit me with a baseball, but I have recovered. We also did have a cookout for our staff, and several of our board members were able to participate in that, along with our students as well. It was a wonderful opening day of school. I had the opportunity, both Jess and Nicole and I, to walk through, I think, every single classroom in the building. We may have missed one or two. And just to see the energy and excitement, not only with the kids, but with the teachers as well. I mean, really, it was just amazing. I think the highlight for me was the opportunity to spend time in a kindergarten classroom. They were doing a movement break, and they were doing a first day of school kind of song and dance. And just to see the smiles on kids, the excitement. And I had several teachers comment to me just about how, wow, this feels normal for the first time in a long time. And I think when you think about that statement and the long road that we've had, it's pretty telling, right? So to that end, I want to thank our administrators for all of their hard work. Undoubtedly, the hardest week in building administrators' year is the week before school starts. It's absolutely insane. Our folks step up. They do it so seamlessly. When our students show up, it just seems like perfection, even though we, struggle through all of the challenges of opening a school building. So I thank members of the Hampstead leadership team for all their work. I do also want to just put a plug. We still have open positions, and some of these are really critical. We have 2 vacancies in our IT department. We have an IT technician, and we also have a network administrator position that we're looking to fill. Not having these positions filled is a real strain on the department. It does impact a lot of the daily functions. So if anyone is interested in coming to work for a school and you have some experience in technology at Ask, please, please reach out to us. Also, just wanted to highlight too, on September 6th, we had a tabletop exercise with the Department of Homeland Security and our administrative team here at the middle school. A tabletop exercise is a simulated active shooter scenario that we do, and the purpose of it is to test our capabilities to ensure, to the maximum extent possible, readiness on the part of school and first responders. We should receive a report from the Department of Homeland Security in the next couple of weeks. We'll review that report, and we'll make any changes that we may need to our protocols. But it was really, it was an excellent activity for us to participate in. As a leadership team, we've already talked about some of the deficiencies and some of the changes that we need to make. I will offer the board the opportunity to review that report. It is a limited release report, and therefore, if the board did desire to look at it, we'd have to do that in a non-public session. I also wanted to give an update. At the previous board meeting, the board waived policies for class sizes for a couple of the different grade levels. One of the grade levels that was waived was grade 5, and I explained a scenario that we were in, had a vacancy for a reading teacher in grade 5. I was not confident at the last meeting that we would fill that position. and asked the board to waive the class size policy in the event that we needed to collapse that section. That would have brought our class sizes from about 22, 23 up to 28. I am delighted to report that we were able to hire, not only were we able to hire a reading teacher, but somebody who is value added to our staff and is doing an amazing job starting the school year. So I'm happy to report that we do not need to increase our 5th grade class sizes to 28. So. And then just lastly, we've got a lot of new people this year, and that is really exciting. And it is really important that we're supporting our new folks and building capacity for them as professionals. I've had the opportunity, and other members of the leadership team have, to spend time in the classrooms of our new teachers, begin the process of mentoring them and supporting them. We've hired some really phenomenal people, and our goal is to cultivate them and get them to stick around as long as possible. That's all I have for a superintendent report. I would welcome any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, we have other business, old business. I know I got 2 quick things, but before anything from anyone. Other business, we will have a new Pinkerton student liaison joining us for our next board meeting. She comes from Hampstead, if you can believe that, everyone. She has lived here her whole life. She is a Pinkerton student of class of 2024, so she is a junior. Her name is Shannon Caffell. And so we're looking forward to Shannon joining us all the way from Hampstead, so appreciate that. The other one I just want to I guess I can consider it old business because going back to transportation update. I just want to give recognition and kudos to 2 people in the room that I don't think many people know the story of this, and I just want to make sure to communicate it because I think it's a testament to our leadership team here. So many parents were calling about, my student was dropped off somewhere, or my student wasn't dropped off somewhere, or why is it late, all these things. And over almost Labor Day weekend, I'm heading up north. I call Mr. Thompson, how's the buses going? And he told me a story that happened that I think it's definitely kudos to Mr. Thompson and Dr. Cheney, which was there was, they weren't only listening to the bus company about things, they wanted to see for themselves. So they put a plan in place to put Dr. Cheney on the bus and to drive around and see what is going on with some questionable practices or whatnot. And they put an action in place to say, depending on what they see, there's going to put some more action. And so we really appreciate that Mr. Thompson, Dr. Cheney, not only stepped up to say we're going to go see what's going on, but also because of what they saw, they pushed for the bus company to do something different. And I think it's a testament to leadership, but also not just to being reactive, but proactive to make sure it doesn't happen again. So thank you, Mr. Thompson, Dr. Cheney, for that. Really appreciate what you're doing. So that's what I got.
Yeah, I would add Mr. Smith to that as well.
Oh, Mr. Schmidt. I was like, Mr. Smith. No, I just made a phone call. Mr. Schmidt.
A
yes.
frequent passenger on buses as well, which is one of the roles of the assistant principal at the Central School. So thank you, Mr. Schmidt, as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Thank you for that. So, and I don't think we have anything for non-public, so we're going to look to adjourn a little bit later than we expected, but at 9:12 p.m. on September 13th. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.